Our first segment is the Friday Sermon segment, and we're joined by Qasim Amini Sahib. Qasim Amini Sahib is Naib Motamim Tarbiyat Khudam Ahmadiyya UK, and he also leads the Friday Sermon discussion project. So I think at first it'll be very interesting to hear from Qasim Sahib about what this project is.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah for having me on today. I'm delighted to be here. So the Majlis Ahmadiyya UK Tarbiyat Friday Sermon discussion project is a weekly video session that we upload onto the Majlis Ahmadiyya UK YouTube channel and the Instagram page, which aims to dissect the khutbah of Hazur, to give it into small bite-sized chunks, dissecting some of the points from the khutbah, which we thought would be of interest to the viewers. And it also is an English discussion program for those who may have it as Urdu be a bit more difficult for them to understand.
Fantastic. I think you touched on a lot of good points, and for us as Waqf-e and Ahmadi Muslims, it's important for us to always listen to the Friday sermon, because I feel like it's a dose of spirituality. Hazur's preparation, which goes into preparing the Friday sermon, starts very early on in the week, and we have a responsibility to listen to what Hazur says, act upon that, because obviously he is he's our Khalifa, who we turn to for guidance and prayers. And I think the benefit of having a Khalifa is his direct guidance. It's a weekly kind of dose of knowledge, which sometimes we might lack and forget, and it's a reminder for us on a daily basis to listen to those Friday sermons and refresh them in our minds, so we're able to act upon the guidance given to us by our Khalifa.
Absolutely. And if we think that, Hazur is the worldwide head of this community, and, sometimes we can be sat somewhere like the UK when we only focus on the problems and troubles around us, but Hazur sees the troubles and hears the troubles of our, brothers and sisters across the world. And in the recent sermon, Hazur has been mentioning, places like Pakistan and Algeria, where our brothers and sisters, Ahmadi brothers and sisters, have been suffering persecution. And it reminds us to pray for them, to put ourselves in those people's shoes as well. And it gives us the opportunity to understand, the troubles that other people are going through as well, and gives us that opportunity to actually pray and sympathize with other members of our community as well.
I feel like it's beautiful to have that understanding of the struggles and challenges that other people go through across the world, because sometimes I feel like we take it for granted that we're able to practice our faith so freely living in the UK. So we have a responsibility, very rightly said, to pray for those individuals across the world who may be struggling with practicing their faith or so on and so forth. So you're right, Qasim, it's a fantastic reminder on a weekly basis for us to pray for our fellow Ahmadi brothers and sisters across the world.
Absolutely. And following on from that, obviously within the Friday Sermon discussion project as well, we include videos of the extracts from Friday sermons. So I thought it would be really good to introduce one of the videos. And I think we can go to one of those now.
Fantastic.
आजकल जो वबा फैली हुई है कोरोना वायरस की, उसके बारे में भी अब आपको तो दिलानी चाहता हूँ कि जैसा कि हुकूमतों के और महकमों की तरफ से हुकूमतों के ऐलान हो रहे हैं, उन एहतियाती तदाबीर पर हमें सबको अमल करना चाहिए। बाज़ होम्योपैथिक दवाइयाँ बहुत शुरू में मैंने होम्योपैथ से मशवरा करके बताई थी, जो हिफ्ज़ मातक़द्दुम के तौर पर भी हैं और बाज़ इलाज के तौर पर भी, उनको इस्तेमाल करना चाहिए। ये एक मुमकिन इलाज है, ये नहीं हम कह सकते कि 100% इलाज है या इसका होम्योपैथिक को पता है इस वायरस का, ये ऐसी वायरस है इसका कोई इल्म नहीं, लेकिन इसके करीब तरीन जो मुमकिन इलाज हो सकता था इस किस्म की बीमारी का, उसके मुताबिक दवाइयाँ तजवीज़ की गई हैं। अल्लाह ताला इन्हें शिफा भी रखे, इसलिए इस्तेमाल करना चाहिए। लेकिन इसके साथ ही एहतियाती तदाबीर भी ज़रूरी हैं, जैसा कि ऐलान हो रहे हैं। इस बारे में ये भी ज़रूरी है कि मजमे से बचें। मस्जिद में आने वालों को भी एहतियात करनी चाहिए। अगर हल्का सा भी बुखार है, जिस्म टूट रहा है या छींकें नज़ला वगैरह है, तो मस्जिद में नहीं आना चाहिए। फिर मस्जिद के भी हुकूक हैं कुछ, और ये मस्जिद का हक़ है कि वहाँ कोई ऐसा शख्स ना आए जिससे दूसरे मुतासर हो सकते हैं। किसी भी लगने वाली बीमारी का मरीज़ जो है उसको मस्जिद में आने से बहुत एहतियात करनी चाहिए। फिर आजकल ख़ास तौर पे छींक लेते वक्त भी, वैसे अमूमी तौर पर भी हर एक को चाहिए कि छींक लेते हुए मुंह पर हाथ रखे या रुमाल रखना चाहिए मुंह पर। बाज़ नमाजी भी शिकायत करते हैं कि बाज़ लोग छींकते हैं हमारे साथ खड़े हुए और मुंह के सामने ना हाथ रखते हैं ना रुमाल रखते हैं, और फिर इतनी ज़ोर से छींक होती है कि उसके छींटे हम पर भी पड़ जाते हैं। तो ये नमाजियों को, जो साथ के नमाजी हैं, उनका भी हक है, इसलिए हर एक को इस बात का भी ख्याल रखना चाहिए। और आजकल जैसा कि मैंने कहा, ख़ास तौर पर इसकी एहतियात की ज़रूरत है। आजकल जो डॉक्टर एहतियात बताते हैं वो ये है कि हाथ और चेहरा साफ रखें। हाथ अगर गंदे हैं तो चेहरे पर हाथ ना लगाएं, और हाथों पर सैनिटाइज़र लगा के रखें या धोते रहें। लेकिन मुसलमानों के लिए, हमारे लिए, अगर 5 वक्त का नमाजी है कोई और 5 वक्त बाकायदा वज़ू भी कर रहा है, नाक में पानी भी चढ़ा रहे हैं, उससे नाक साफ़ हो रहा है और सही तरह वज़ू किया जा रहा है, तो ये सफाई का एक ऐसा आला मयार है जो सैनिटाइज़र की कमी पूरी कर देता है। आजकल क्योंकि मार्केट से सैनिटाइज़र सुने गायब हो चुके हुए हैं, लोगों ने पैनिक में सब कुछ ख़रीद लिया है, दुकान की शेल्फ खाली हैं, और ख़ास तौर पर ऐसी चीज़ें जो इस काम के लिए इस्तेमाल हो सकती हैं। बहरहाल जो वज़ू है, और सही तरह अगर वज़ू किया जाए तो ज़ाहिरी सफाई भी है, और वज़ू जब करेगा इंसान फिर नमाज भी पढ़ेगा, तो ये एक रूहानी सफाई का भी ज़रिया बन जाता है। बस इस, और फिर आजकल तो ख़ास तौर पर दुआओं की भी बहुत ज़रूरत है, इसलिए इस तरफ हमें ख़ास तवज्जो देनी चाहिए।
Now that was just a very short segment from Hazur's Friday sermon. I think one thing we wanted to emphasize, of course, is that regardless of how much we discuss the Friday sermon or take snippets from the Friday sermon, nothing can replace the full Friday sermon that Hazur gives to us on a weekly basis.
Exactly.
And it's of utmost importance, particularly as Waqf-e-Nau, that we derive full benefit from the entirety of the sermon. But in reference to this particular segment, if we bring back Qasim Amini Sahib, it was really fascinating to think that this was before the pandemic, and Hazur is giving us this guidance in relation to hygiene. What are your thoughts on this and this in particular?
Absolutely, Rizal. If we actually look, that was on the 6th of March 2020, and Betaftul was full, and it seems like such a long time ago that we actually see a full masjid where Hazur is delivering a sermon. At the time, there wasn't as much clear guidance being issued by governments or health authorities, and even the fact that lockdown hadn't even started at that time. Mm-hmm. But Hazur Aziz, in his infinite wisdom and his divine guidance that he was giving us, ultimately was telling us practical, clear steps on how to stay safe in that time, and how to also keep ourselves clean, and reflecting on the fact that as Muslims, doing wuzu 5 times a day inculcates that habit already about hygiene and how hygiene is part of our faith. But ultimately, the early guidance that Hazur was giving was a step away from some of the unclear messages that other authorities have been giving us.
Absolutely. And I think one thing was of particular interest also, we're seeing this more, I think, nowadays, in that there's been a drive within a lot of Muslim communities, ethnic minority communities, one, at the beginning of the pandemic, was to even take the pandemic seriously, and now more recently with the vaccine drive. But we had this clear guidance from Hazur, unequivocal guidance that gave us a very direct instruction in terms of how to act and behave, particularly in regards to hygiene, but also Islam's teaching in reference to the pandemic. So that is just fascinating to think that this all took place even before the government gave us guidelines on how to act. And you mentioned Baitul Futur being full at the time. It just feels like a world away from where we are now, but it just shows the infinite wisdom that we receive from these Friday sermons.
Exactly, and just to allude on an earlier point that you made, the discussion project itself, we always emphasize it's not a substitute but in any way, shape or form for that sermon. It's just to bring out some points that hopefully may trigger something for someone to think, right, I might ponder on that a bit more, or just some added guidance. And this coronavirus pandemic aspect, it just shows the guidance that is in with us, Hazur's sermons, is infinite, and we shouldn't take it lightly at all.
Absolutely. Shall we go on to the next clip, Qasim Sahib? Do you want to introduce what the next clip will be about?
So obviously we've heard from the past few years now that Hazur has been mentioning the companions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Hazur has been was asked this question in a mulaqat. So let's watch the video now.
गुज़िश्ता चंद खुतबात में जंगों का जिक्र कर रहे हैं, जंग बदर का, और
मैं जंगों का तो जिक्र कोई नहीं कर रहा, मैं तो सहाबा का जिक्र कर रहा हूँ।
सहाबा के साथ जो जंगों में वाक़यात शादी हुई,
उन सहाबा का जिक्र कर रहा हूँ जो जंग बदर में शरीक हुए, ठीक है। उनके बारे में अल्लाह ताला ने पहले कहा कि ये बख्शे गए हैं और अल्लाह ताला इनसे राज़ी हुआ, इनका मुकाम है। उन 313 सहाबा का जिक्र कर रहा हूँ ताकि हम इसको याद रखें। वैसे मेरे तो ध्यान में तो नहीं था, बाद में मुझे किसी ने याद दिलाया। मुस्लिम इस्लाम का ये तो इत्फाक़ है कि अल्लाह ताला ने मेरे दिल में डाला कि जिक्र हो जाए, और वो शुरू हो गया। हज़रत मुस्लिम इस्लाम को इल्हाम है या ख्वाब में अल्लाह ताला ने फरमाया कि बदर के वाक़या को मत भूलो, ठीक। तो ये तो मुझे गुज़श्ता हफ़्ते ही पता लगा इस बात पे, तो इस बात ये, लेकिन पहले बिल्कुल मेरे जहन में नहीं था। और फिर तो लेकिन मेरे दिल में ये तारीख जरूर पैदा हुई थी कि बदर के वाक़या को मत भूलो, इनका जिक्र करो। तो अल्लाह ताला का ये तवारद है, या अल्लाह ताला चाहता है कि इनका जिक्र किया जाए। इसमें बहुत सारे वाक़यात आ जाते हैं, और मैं सिर्फ शहदा की बातें नहीं बता रहा हूँ, उनकी ज़रिए से बहुत सारी अच्छी रवायतें हमें पता लग रही हैं, उनकी नेकियों की बातें पता लग रही हैं, उनके तकवा के मयार पता लग रहे हैं, उनकी आद रसूल में खिदमत के वाक़यात पता लग रहे हैं, आद रसूल की उनसे मोहब्बत के वाक़यात पता लग रहे हैं। तो तारीख बन जाएगी एक आपकी इकट्ठी जमात अहमदी में। पहले इस तरह सहाबा की कोई नहीं तारीख इकट्ठी, ठीक है। हाँ, इन चीज़ों से आप लोगों को हर जो है वाक़या है और हर सहाबी का अपना इनफरादी वाक़या जो है, अगर उसमें से अगर निकालते जाएं तो अपनी ज़िंदगियों में हम अपने चस्पा करने की कोशिश करें, तो हमारी अपनी तरबियत होगी उससे, और हमारे में जरूरत भी पैदा होगी तबलीग के लिए भी और सख्तियाँ बर्दाश्त करने के लिए भी।
Qasim, oh sorry, go for it. I was just going to make a comment of how beneficial these Friday sermons have been, especially for me. I learned a lot as an individual, and these incidents of the companions of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, are something which we can reflect on and try and inculcate those into our lives. They were some of the most righteous people who ever lived. And they were in direct guidance and in the shadow of prophethood. So it's important for us to reflect on these points and these stories of the companions. And it just emphasizes the importance of the Friday sermon, because in our day-to-day life, we might not have time or take out certain part of time or certain chunk of the day to do our research on history of Islam. And this effort that Hazur, may Allah be his helper, goes into preparing these Friday sermons, it's something which we can learn from and get our dose of history and life lessons which we can use every single day of the week. And these companions are really individuals who we can try and adopt the qualities which they had.
It's a brilliant point that you've just made. And just to add on that, the significance of this series has been unmeasurable. I mean, we've been doing for the weekly Friday Sermon Discussion Project, the vast majority of the sermons have been reflecting on the companions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And a couple of points that I think would be poignant to discuss at this stage is, one is the fact that the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that his companions are like stars. And if you follow any of those, you will be rightly guided. Okay. And another point is in regards to the fact that, you know, these people are role models for us. They have had instances and examples and evidences with the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and stories with him, and it just increased our love of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well, by giving us, you know, how he behaved, how he acted, how he treated people, and these examples have been, you know, beautiful to hear from the mouths of Blessed Hazur and all the research that he's undertaken to get us here.
Qasim, one thing I want to just to emphasize is the importance or the responsibility we have as individuals to make notes of the Friday sermon, because it's one thing listening to the Friday sermon and absorbing it, but I feel like the next step of understanding and learning is when you make notes, and by taking that one step further, by educating your family members and teaching someone else, makes that knowledge firm in your own mind. So I think making notes of the Friday sermon is important. and then teaching others as well, just to make sure the knowledge that Hazur gives, which is just so much, we're able to absorb it and teach it to others?
Absolutely, and even in academic circles, that is a technique that is often used, where you present back the information that you've been delivered. And it's obviously with Hazur's sermons, what a better way to digest that information than to try and present it yourself. So I think with that, Sabasab, with your permission, we can move on to the next segment, which will be the final segment of this Friday sermon discussion. So I think there's a video to share, so let's go straight into that now.
Excellent.
इस वक्त मैं चंद मरहूमीन का जिक्र करना चाहता हूँ जिनकी गुज़श्ता दिनों वफ़ात हुई। इनमें से हर एक मुख्तलिफ पेशे से मुंसलिक था, मुख्तलिफ मसरूफियात थीं, तालीमी मेयार मुख्तलिफ थे, लेकिन एक चीज़ मुश्तरक थी कि दीन को दुनिया पर मुक़द्दम करने के अहद बैत को अपनी ताकतों के मुताबिक निभाने वाले, हज़रत मसीह मऊद अलैहिस्सलाम की बैत का हक़ अदा करने वाले, खिलाफत अहमदिया से कामिल वफ़ा और इखलास का तल्लुक़ रखने वाले, हुकूकुल इबाद का हक़ अदा करने वाले थे। और ये बात साबित करने वाले थे कि इस्लाम की जिस खूबसूरत तालीम पर अमल करवाने के लिए अल्लाह ताला ने हज़रत सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम के ग़ुलाम साक़ को भेजा है, उसकी अमली सूरत हकीकत में उनमें पाई जाती थी। ये मैंने कहा कि एक चीज़ मुश्तरक थी, ये एक नहीं बल्कि ये बहुत सारी खसूसियात उनमें मुश्तरक थी। इनके वाक़यात सुनकर ये यकीन पैदा होता है कि इस ज़माने में ये हज़रत मसीह अलैहिस्सलाम, इस ज़माने में ये बातें, ये चीज़ें हज़रत मसीह अलैहिस्सलाम ही हैं जिनके साथ जुड़कर बंदे और खुदा के दरमियान हकीकी ताल्लुक़ पैदा करने का सलीका हमें आ सकता है और आता है। और खुदा ताला के ज़िंदा होने पर कामिल यकीन और उसकी रज़ा पर राज़ी रहने के आला मयार हासिल होते हैं। जिन मरहूमीन का जिक्र मैंने करना है उनमें से एक हैं हमारे मुबल्लिग़ सिलसिला जुल्फ़िकार अहमद दमानिक साहब, रीजनल मुबल्लिग़ इंडोनेशिया के। आप ये हमेशा कहा करते थे कि कभी मायूस नहीं होना, क्योंकि हमारा काम तो तबलीग करना और बीज लगाना है। हो सकता है कटाई या उसका फल किसी और हिस्से में आए। बहरहाल बड़े पुख्ता इरादे वाले और वफा के साथ अपना वक्त निभाने वाले थे। अल्लाह ताला इनके दर्जात बुलंद फरमाए। उन्होंने अपने अहद बैत को भी निभाया और वक्फ के अहद को भी खूबसूरती के साथ निभाया। अल्लाह ताला इनके दर्जात बुलंद फरमाता रहे, इनकी अहलिया और इनके बच्चों को अपनी हिफाजत में रखे और ख़ुद ही उनका कफ़ील भी हो।
Now, we've only heard three short segments today from Hazur's Friday sermons. And of course, the last one we've just heard about is truly faith-inspiring to hear the accounts of these individuals, how they've dedicated their lives and given precedence to faith over all worldly matters. But of course, these are only three small clips. And it's just to re-emphasize the point that the amount of effort and intention that Hazur gives to these Friday sermons and how much benefit we can derive from them, there is no substitute to listening to the Friday sermon in its entirety and understanding it, and as you mentioned and we've been discussing with Qasim, taking notes and really interrogating it. I think one other element, of course, and I struggle with this, is to really understand it in Urdu, in the language that Hazur delivers it in, and try to encourage ourselves to understand it in the way that Hazur is speaking. So Qasim, just to go into this final segment and this incredible Friday sermon that Hazur gave, referencing individuals and how they gave, they dedicated their lives towards their faith. What more can we learn from this, or what can we derive from this Friday sermon?
Jazakallah Rizwan Sahab, and just emphasizing again what a faith-inspiring sermon that was. We've just heard previous to this about the companions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who were role models, but that was hundreds of years ago. And some people may think that those people didn't have the same challenges that we're having nowadays. But then we've been given these three individuals that lived in this day and age, that had the same challenges that we see on a daily basis, and yet were shining lights of the community. And two things that Hazur mentioned was the fact that they gave precedence to their faith over any worldly matters, and they established that relationship with Khilafat. And obviously one of the members as well that we just showed in that clip was a Waqf as well, who was a Murabi in Indonesia. I think with the points that we've made already, it goes back to emphasizing the Friday sermons and the attachment to Khilafat Ahmadiyya, and what better way to attach yourself to Khilafat Ahmadiyya than the platform that Hazur has, the weekly Friday sermons, to watch that, to dissect them. And if there are any other projects like the Majlis Khilafat Ahmadiyya UK Tarbiyat Friday Sermon Discussion Project that helps you in that way, then obviously that's a brilliant point from our perspective. And that's the point that I will end on here today.
Fantastic. Jazakallah Qasim. I think that was truly a fascinating discussion, and again an emphasis for us to pay attention to the Friday sermons and understand them and derive full benefit from them.